Every man watching this has done it. You see a beautiful woman, and the first thing that comes out of your mouth is some version of, "You're so pretty," or "You have beautiful eyes," or "Wow, you're gorgeous." And you think you're making her day. You think you just set yourself apart. You think that compliment is going to make her remember you. It won't. In fact, it does the exact opposite. It makes you forgettable. Instantly, completely, permanently forgettable. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why. More importantly, you're going to learn what to do instead. Something so simple, so counterintuitive, that most men will hear it and still not do it, because it requires a level of emotional intelligence that most guys never develop. But you're not most guys. That's why you're here. Let me take you inside her mind for a second. And I mean really inside. Not the surface level stuff you see in most videos. I'm talking about the deep wiring. The psychology that drives her emotional responses, whether she's aware of it or not. A woman who is even moderately attractive has been hearing compliments about her face since she was a teenager, maybe earlier. "You're so pretty. What a beautiful smile. Your eyes are stunning." She's heard these words hundreds of times, maybe thousands, from family members, from friends, from strangers on the street, from every guy at the bar, in her DMs, at the coffee shop, at the gym. Now think about what happens when something is repeated to you thousands of times. It loses meaning completely. It becomes background noise. It becomes the thing that everyone says. And when you say it too, you don't stand out. You blend in. You become just another voice in the chorus of men who saw her face and couldn't think of anything more interesting to say about her than what she looks like. And here's the part that really stings. When you compliment her face, you're not actually telling her anything about herself. You're telling her something about you. You're telling her that the first thing you noticed, the thing you thought was most worth commenting on, was her appearance. The thing she had almost no control over, the thing that genetics handed her. You looked at this complex, layered, multi-dimensional human being and reduced her to her cheekbones. She won't say this to you. She'll smile, she'll say thank you, she might even blush. But inside, she's filing you in the same folder as every other man who couldn't see past her face. And that folder is labeled forgettable. So, if not her face, then what? What do you compliment? What do you say that actually lands? What makes a woman think about you hours later, days later, when she's lying in bed staring at the ceiling? You compliment something she chose. Let me say that again, because this is the entire foundation of what I'm about to teach you. You compliment something she chose. Something that reflects a decision she made. Something that reveals her taste, her personality, her effort, her creativity, her mind. And the reason this works goes deep into female psychology, deeper than most people ever bother to look. When you compliment something a woman chose, you're communicating several things simultaneously without saying any of them directly. First, you're telling her you actually looked at her, not glanced, not scanned, looked. You paid attention to the details. You noticed something specific that most people would overlook. Second, you're telling her that you see her as a person with agency, not just a pretty face that exists for you to admire. Third, and this is the most powerful part, you're validating her identity, not her genetics, her identity, the version of herself she actively constructed and put out into the world. That's what she wants to be seen for. That's what nobody ever notices. And when you're the man who notices it, something clicks inside her brain that she can't easily shake. Now let me show you what this looks like in real life, because theory is useless without application. Scenario 1. You meet a woman at a social event. She's wearing an interesting ring. Not her engagement ring, not something generic, something unusual, something with character. Most guys wouldn't even register it, but you do. And you say, "That ring has a story behind it, doesn't it? Look at what just happened." You didn't compliment her appearance. You didn't tell her she was beautiful. You noticed a detail. You connected it to a deeper narrative, and you invited her to share something personal. In one sentence, you've created more intimacy than 100 "you're gorgeous" comments ever could. Because now she's not just being admired, she's being understood. Or at least she feels like you're trying to understand her. And that feeling is magnetic. Scenario 2. You're talking to a woman and she makes a sharp, witty observation about something. Most guys would just laugh and move on, but you pause. You look at her and say, "You have a really specific way of seeing things. I like that. Hi, what did you just do?" You complimented her mind, her perspective, the unique filter through which she processes the world. You told her that the thing that makes her different, the thing she probably wondered if anyone would ever appreciate, is exactly what caught your attention. That compliment will echo inside her head for weeks. I promise you that. Scenario 3. She's telling you about a decision she made. Maybe she left a comfortable job to start something on her own. Maybe she moved to a new city alone. Maybe she chose an unconventional path that other people questioned. And you say, "That took real courage." Most people spend their whole lives avoiding exactly what you did. You just made her feel seen on a level that almost no man ever reaches. You acknowledged something she struggled with, something she probably questioned herself about, something she wanted validation for but never directly asked for, and you gave it to her without her having to ask. That's not just attractive, that's unforgettable. Let me pull back and give you the bigger picture, because I don't want you to just memorize examples. I want you to understand the principle so deeply that it becomes instinct. Every human being walks around with two selves. There's the external self, the one everyone can see, height, weight, bone structure, skin, hair. And then there's the internal self, the one that took years to build. The taste, the humor, the values, the fears they conquered, the style they cultivated, the worldview they pieced together through experience and reflection. Here's the crucial insight. Most people only ever engage with the external self. That's what gets attention on social media. That's what gets compliments at parties. That's what the world responds to first and often exclusively. But the internal self? That's the one that's starving for recognition. That's the one that says, "Does anyone actually see me? Not my body, not my face, me." And when you become the man who speaks to that internal self, you access a part of her emotional world that is almost completely unoccupied. There's no competition there because almost nobody goes there. Think about that. In a world where every man is competing to complement her appearance, you step into a space where there's almost no one. The space where you acknowledge her mind, her choices, her character, her depth. You're not fighting for her attention alongside every other guy. You're standing alone in a room that most men don't even know exists. That's power. Real, quiet, unshakable power. Now, I need to address something because I can already hear the objections forming. So, I'm never supposed to tell a woman she's beautiful. I'm supposed to just pretend she isn't attractive? No, that's not what this is about. Physical compliments have their place, but their place is later, much later, after you've already established that you see her as more than a face. After she already knows you're the kind of man who notices depth before surface. after a foundation of real connection has been built. When a woman already feels seen and valued for who she is, and then you tell her she's beautiful, that compliment lands completely differently. It doesn't feel generic anymore. It feels earned. It feels like it's coming from a man who looked past everything obvious and still chose to come back to tell her she's beautiful on top of everything else he already appreciates about her. That's not the same compliment, not even close. Same words, completely different impact. Because context is everything. A compliment about her appearance from a man who only sees her appearance is hollow. A compliment about her appearance from a man who clearly sees everything else first. That's the one she tells her friends about. Let me give you something practical to watch for, so you know when you've landed in that deeper space. When you compliment something she chose and it resonates, her response won't be a simple thank you. Watch for these signals. She pauses before responding, like she's processing something she didn't expect to feel. She breaks eye contact briefly and looks down with a slight smile, almost like she's embarrassed, but in a good way. She asks a follow-up question, wanting to extend the moment. She brings it up again later in the conversation, maybe saying something like, "What you said earlier about my," or "Nobody's ever noticed that before." That last one, "Nobody's ever noticed that before." That's the sentence you're aiming for. When a woman says that to you, you've done something most men never accomplish. You made her feel singular. Not just pretty, singular. Like she's the only version of herself that exists, and you're the first man perceptive enough to see it. That's not a compliment anymore. That's a moment. And moments are what people remember, not words. Moments. I'm going to end with something uncomfortable because I think you need to hear it. The reason most men default to complimenting a woman's face isn't because they lack better options. It's because complimenting her face is easy. It requires zero effort, zero observation, zero emotional depth. You look, you see something pretty, you say so. Done. It's the lowest effort form of engagement that still technically counts as a compliment. But complimenting what she chose, that requires you to actually pay attention, to slow down, to be present enough to notice the details that most people miss, to listen closely enough to catch the things she said that revealed something real about who she is. It requires emotional intelligence, social awareness, genuine interest in another human being beyond what they look like. And most men aren't willing to develop that. Not because they can't, because it takes real internal work. It takes becoming the kind of man who is genuinely curious about people. Not performing curiosity, actually feeling it. And you can't fake that. Women have built-in radar for the difference between a man who is genuinely interested in understanding them and a man who learned a technique from a YouTube video and is running it like a script. So yes, the technique matters. The specific compliment matters. But underneath all of it, what really matters is whether you're the kind of man who actually sees people. If you are, this will feel natural. If you're not yet, start there. Start with learning to pay attention. Start with genuine curiosity. The right words will follow. So, here's your mission. The next woman you interact with, whether it's someone new or someone you already know, I want you to resist the urge to comment on her appearance just once. Instead, find something she chose, something that reflects who she is, not what she was born with, and say something about it. Something honest, something specific, something that shows you actually looked. Watch what happens. Watch how her eyes change. Watch how the conversation shifts. Watch how she leans in just a little closer. And then you'll understand exactly what I've been talking about for the last several minutes. You'll understand that women don't remember the men who told them they were pretty. They remember the men who made them feel seen. If this changed the way you think, even slightly, subscribe. This channel is for men who want to operate on a different level. Not with manipulation, not with tricks, with understanding. Real, deep, psychological understanding of how human connection actually works. Leave a comment and tell me the most memorable compliment you've ever received. Not the most flattering one, the most memorable one. I bet it had nothing to do with your face. I'll catch you in the next.